I read a quote the other day by the Aretha Franklin, and she said something like this: women have broken through the glass ceiling, and they're now more and more in the power seats. Today, we have some ladies that have broken through the ceiling and are flourishing in their careers. These women are leaders within their respective state agencies and will share information about their work, personal journeys, and ideas on what has worked to get this far, what it has taken them to get this far, and what is needed to lift the iceberg and crack the ceiling of diversity, equity, and inclusion, in particular, gender diversity in their agencies. I would like to turn the mic over to Beatra Wilson, who will be moderating our panel today. Beatra began her career with the USDA State Forest Service in 2002. She currently serves as the Assistant Director, Urban and Community for the United States Forest Service. I would like to now turn it over to Ms. Beatra Wilson.
Thank you, Mia. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming back at 5:15. This is a first. This is a first. 20 years, and this is the biggest crowd at 5:15 at an all-day conference. So thank you for joining us. Tamberly, that was awesome. I'm so proud of you. Congratulations. That was awesome. So thank you, Mia, for the introduction. I'm excited for this opportunity to moderate and spend some time with these dynamic women in state forestry agencies. A little bit of context here. Why it's exciting is I'm USDA Forest Service. So on the federal side, I have been on the deputy area of the Forest Service that serves state and private forests across the country for my entire career. So 21 years. 21 years. I started my career as an urban forester trainee in Atlanta, Georgia, and today I am the nation's leader for the program. Woo! So, sitting here today with these leaders is amazing because I remember when I started, and I'm gonna let you all introduce yourself, but I just wanna tell you why it means so much to be here moderating this conversation, because when I started, this is not what a state forestry leadership meeting looked like, right? And so to have met these ladies and spent some time, and everybody is so comfortable in who they are and how they are leading the program, it's a proud moment for us on the state and private forestry side, where a lot of the work we do is inside of communities and not just inside the forest, the systems, the woods. We really do have an opportunity to connect with homeowners and landowners with the work we do. And that, if you can imagine, is just a different muscle than the true traditional practitioner side of the work we do. So I'm gonna let these ladies introduce themselves, just quick moment. Hillary, Heather, Patty, I want you to provide some context about who you are and where you are in your organization, and then we'll kick this conversation off.
Okay, I'll start, I guess.
Sure.
So I'm Hillary Franz, Commissioner of Public Lands for Washington State. I am one of 5 elected Commissioner of Public Lands in the country. And so I'm a statewide elected, and I oversee the Department of Natural Resources for Washington State. I am the head of the state, responsible only to the people of Washington State. Thank you. Thank you. Whoa, is this Washington in the house? Thank you. Love you. Hey, I finally found 5 women in the woods I never seen before. And in that role, I oversee 6 agencies. So I oversee 2.6 million acres of aquatic lands, 1 million acres of agricultural lands. We're actually the largest wheat producer in the state, becoming one of the largest vineyard producers in the state, as well as 2 million acres of forest land. I only have one regulatory role, which is I regulate the large and small forest landowners. And then I oversee wildfire for the entire state of Washington, which we know is getting to be a bigger and bigger job. And if that wasn't enough, we're a volatile state. I don't mean just politically. I oversee Washington State geology. So think we have the threat of a big earthquake, tsunamis. We have 5 live volcanoes, could go up at any time. I hope not while I'm here or while I'm in office, please. As well as landslides, and we obviously made people maybe we had the worst landslide in American history not too long ago. So there is no slow day at the office. I'm the second woman to ever serve in this role in Washington State. Thank you. And as a woman who went to all women's high school and all women's college, any Smithies in the house, it is so great to actually get the numbers up in a room that I haven't seen in a long, long time next to my last cafeteria experience in school. So thank you.
Thank you, Hillary. Heather?
Yes, I'm Heather Birkland, and what an honor to be here. I'm the State Forester for Wisconsin. Division Administrator, Chief State Forester is actually how the title is in the state statutes. We are under, the Division of Forestry is under our Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. I've been with the DNR since graduation of college for 22 years. And I have been in this role now for 2 years, just had my 2-year anniversary. I was the first female. So since 1904, leading Wisconsin's division of forestry and forestry in the state. So really exciting and an honor to be in this position. We have 17 million acres of forest land in Wisconsin, 1.5 million of state lands that we directly oversee and manage, but we also partner with our county forest program, which is huge, 2.4 million acres, as well as we are in one of the first formal agreements with Good Neighbor Authority for Chequamegon-Nicolet National Forest. So that was great. And so then our programs, again, lots of statutory obligations and lots of partnerships, managing fire protection, prescribed burning, private and public land management. We have a huge applied forestry bureau, which includes our urban forestry program, forest products, forest health, sciences, as well as business services, important tax law program for our state, actually in one of the leading states in the nation for tax breaks for landowners for the tax program. And so just, we have about 430 staff that I oversee, plus several handful, 50 or so LTEs. So I oversee the policy, coordinating a lot with legislators, working with our DNR administration, and then, yeah, so really happy to be here, and it's really an honor.
Thank you, Heather. Patty.
Good afternoon or evening. I'm Patty Thielen. I am the DNR Forestry Division Director / State Forester, and I've been in my current role for like a month and a half.
Oh, wow.
So I'm still learning a lot about my new role. I've worked for the Department of Natural Resources for 27 years, actually for 27 years today. Today is my anniversary. Most of that has been with the forestry division. I've worked for forestry for 23 out of those 27 years. For 4 years, I worked at a department level and oversaw the work of all 7 of DNR's divisions in the northeastern quarter or so of the state. So it was a great opportunity to learn some new things, but I was really excited to have an opportunity to come back home to forestry about a year ago, and it's been great. We have, I spent about the first 15 years of my career working in the field. I got into forestry to get out of the Twin Cities. I grew up here in the Twin Cities, and I got about as far as you can get without leaving Minnesota. I worked in Baudette for 15 years. That's the bump on the top of Minnesota. It gets pretty cold up there. I worked for about 12 years, about 11 years in management in Grand Rapids, and have been working out of my office in St. Paul for about a year. We have about somewhere between 400 and 500 employees in forestry. Some of them are seasonal, so it's not quite that many FTEs. And we manage about 4.2 million acres of state forest land in Minnesota. Only about half of that is productive. We have a lot of lowland areas, so not all of that is productive. I'm really, really honored to be the first female division director of forestry in Minnesota, but I know there are many more to come, probably some of them that are here today.
Awesome. So I wanted to add this layer because I wanted you all to see the level of boss that these women are, the sizes of their organizations, the sizes of the landscapes they're responsible for. But on the flip side, the potential impact that they can make for forestry in your geographic areas, but also across our sector in forestry and as women. I want to reflect real quickly. The topic of our conversation is, with the tip of the iceberg, we will crack the ceiling. And if you have seen the illustration where there's a picture of the iceberg and then there's a line drawn and there's the water surrounding the base of the iceberg, right? And you see the beautiful sparkling part of the iceberg that's on top, but underneath there's all the hard work that is represented as to what it takes to really move towards progress and inclusion. All the trauma, all the disappointments, all the battles, all the silent suffering, and maybe even a little quiet quitting. But this panel is a testament of what happens when you keep going. And we wanted to showcase this specifically because we've acknowledged that this has been one of the most generational, diverse audiences that we have seen in a very long time. And give yourselves a round of applause. The generational diversity, every table, every session, every breakout, if you were in the innovation lab, if you were in the career room, it's just a breath of fresh air to see those who have been in the space, those who have been navigating, those who are coming into the space, and then all of just the free networking that we've experienced today and we've seen. I flew in, I took the first flight out of Baltimore this morning, 6:25, and this day has flown by for me. And I wanted to make sure I was here to be a part of herstory, is how I put it on Twitter, because I know how much work has been put into being here. So Hillary, I want to kick it off and ask you, your role is unique as you are an elected official. Tell us a little bit about the day in the life of your job. What gets you out of bed, or maybe you can pivot and say what keeps you up at night from your role.
Yeah, so I would say first, I love this question in the concept of what gets you out of bed, because that's oftentimes what's different from what keeps you up at night, right? One is, my son gave me this cup, like the moment my feet hit the ground, the devil starts shaking or something like that. I can't remember it, because, when I first was thinking about running for office, I'll be honest with you, I'd always wanted to be in office. I'm an environmental land use attorney by trade, so it makes natural sense what I'm focused on in this work. And I wanted to be in office since I was 7 years old. Every part of everything I ever did was so that I would be an elected official, right? And then my moment came to run for office, and I was scared. Can I swear in this room? Mm-hmm. I was scared shitless. I'm gonna be really frank with you. I was so incredibly scared. And I had so many people telling me, there's no way you can win. You're not capable. You don't have the expertise and experience to do this job, right? How can a little lady like you run a really big 1,600 person agency that fights fires? And all those voices were very much holding me back. And then I went to my mentor, because I was in a panic of like, what do I do? And you run out of time when you're running for office. You can't wait after a while. And I said, look, I wrote the pros and cons of why I would want to be in this job and what scares me about it, and running. And the pros shouldn't be a surprise. Pros are, we're facing climate change. It is everywhere and it's around us, and we are on the front lines in our state every single day, from floods to drought to dust storms on our farmlands to dying forests. The evergreen state we are is turning rust brown to charcoal black with these fires. And we have a chance, a moment right now, to change that course, to bring our leadership and our vision and our values into everything we do. And the cons were, I could lose, I could humiliate myself, I could humiliate my children and my family. And my mentor said, Hillary, this is the easiest choice you've ever had in your entire life. I'm like, what? How could that be? And he's like, all of your fear, all your cons, that's all about you. And this isn't about you. And this is about the why. What you can do right now to make a difference. And at the time I was thinking about the difference around the environment. And we have economic challenges, especially in our rural communities. We have challenges in our urban communities when it comes to the total disparities, right? But I also realize now it's a chance for me to be able to make a difference to every woman, no matter how old they are, that whatever your dream is, it's never too late to go run after it, face them on, and don't let anybody be your limiting factor ever. So that's what gets me up every morning. I have a nameplate that says do epic shit, so that I never, ever forget this moment. I've got a period of time where I have this unbelievable responsibility that people Washington have gave me, and every woman throughout the entire world is looking up to, right? To actually go do epic shit. So don't play small ball, always play big ball. Your world shrinks or expands in proportion to how much courage you have, right? Not just your personal world, right? But every woman's world, everyone who looks up to you. And so that's what gets me up in the morning. And what scares me at night? Wildfires, people's lives. Am I gonna save the forest from burning and dying fast enough, right? Please, God, do not let an earthquake happen and have a 40-foot tsunami that all of a sudden takes over Seattle, Washington, because it could, or any other part of our community, our coastline. And please do not let any one of the 5 volcanoes erupt at any point in the time that I'm alive, my children are alive, I'm in office. And don't just do one, not even 5, let alone 1. That's what keeps me up at night.
Ladies and gentlemen, Hillary, and by the way, thank you for that, Hillary. I would like to pivot, thinking about your role as a leader, and, I get the fears and the moment in time we're in, and you touched on the disparities, and you touched on having to look at those. 84% of Americans live in urban communities. And so we can turn a blind eye when we want to, but is that really the best way for us to have an impact? Or also, as you said, thinking about the next generation to come and who you can encourage and inspire. So I want to pivot a little bit to the category around diversity and inclusion, right? Because the work we're doing, we can't just do it for ourselves and our own families or our own communities. We have to do it for everybody. We're public servants. And so the expectation is that we do the best by the American public's funding and resources, and make sure that we leave these spaces better than how we found them. I will start with Patty. I'll talk about I want to know about your journey, but also I want to think about what you've experienced in your agency around diversity and inclusion as you're thinking about building the organization for the future, and what your vision might look like.
Sure. So when I first started as a field forester up in Baudette, I think about 3% of our staff that worked in the field were female. And I was kind of digging through some numbers recently for a presentation, and we're up to about 25%, which is a big improvement, but we're not all the way there. But then I started looking at some of our statewide staff and supervisor positions that maybe don't work in the field, but do really important work that makes sure that our field folks can do their work. And the piece that I looked at was about 55% female. And I was pretty excited to see that. That was really good news. So I don't have an estimate for our agency overall, but I think we've made some improvements. When I first started, I'm told by a very trustworthy source that the Baudette area had a meeting the week before I started, an area meeting. This was just a normal meeting, and one of the things the supervisor shared with the staff was that there was a new forester and that it was a girl. And I was not the first female forester in the area, and so I'm glad there was somebody there to break the ground for me. But one of the people that I worked with for many years, I'm told, was very upset that there was another female forester coming in, and he says, "It's just like the Citadel." This was about 2 months after the first woman was admitted to the Citadel Military Academy down in South Carolina, which, okay, it's not anything like the Citadel. But some of the people that I worked with, you know, that's where they were coming from, that women didn't belong in jobs like this. I think things have come a very, very long way since then. In fact, along the way, I eventually became that person's supervisor. And he wasn't very pleased about that at first. And when I gave him his first performance appraisal about a year after I started, and I had a little conversation with him, and I said, I want to thank you for giving me a chance at this job, because you know, you didn't have to, and I think I haven't broken anything immeasurably yet. I think I've done okay. And he said, you're doing okay, which is about the best compliment that anybody could ever get from this person. You know, we've grown some in female composition of our staff, but still have some room to grow. The place where we definitely have some room to grow is in BIPOC, you know, bringing in some people of color, Black, Brown, Indigenous. And one of the things I think about is, when I was that new forester up in Baudette, and it was 5 years before there was another forester in my area, another new forester in my area. So I was the new person for 5 years, and I was the only woman. And at times I was really isolated. This is before cell phones and texting, and we didn't even have email in the office at the time, so Stone Age. But I felt really isolated at times, and really, really looked forward to opportunities to go to some training where I could kind of get with some of my cohort and have some conversations and talk about, you know, how things were going. And so I think about that particularly because outstate Minnesota it's pretty white, and that when we're able to start bringing on some great new, more diverse employees, we need to plan to make sure that they feel welcome and at home and don't have those feelings of isolation that they might, because we want to not just recruit them, we want to retain them. They're going to make us better.
Awesome. I love that. I love that. And it's the perfect way for us to, for me to pivot to Heather, as I have been working closely with Heather, unexpectedly, by the way, but for what, about a year and a half now? Mm-hmm. We have a fun best friendship now, but it's because of like minds, like values, and Heather and her leadership and her team in Wisconsin being real risk takers and really thinking about how to be intentional in the space of not just recruitment, but retention, and creating an environment of belonging when you do have an opportunity to bring a person of color on, or someone who might be culturally different from the staff. So Heather, I want to give you a chance to talk about your experience with diversity and inclusion with Wisconsin, kind of your vision and how you've navigated this space.
Great, thank you. First off, I am not a public speaker, so you know, energetic Hillary and articulate Beatra, and then so that's lesson number one, is let go of your assumptions of what you think all the skills you have to be in a higher leadership role leading a large organization, because you don't have to be good at it all. Surround yourself with people that complement you. And I had the privilege of bringing on in my leadership team great talent and people that really do balance my skill set really well. And so just remember that, because I think oftentimes we miss opportunities because we feel like we need to be really good at it all. And so make up for it in other things, which I do. But love the question. You know, I think, you know, I'm a product of Generation X, and I say that broadly because, yeah, woo! I think it's good for us to recognize too the generational differences in the workplace. And And I think there's this, the women that had to come before us really had to pave the way. There were, minimal, and they had to take, some egregious action. And I'm not saying, and I'm not diminishing that it's not happening still today, which it is, but we're kind of caught in the middle in my generation. It was a lot of, independent, self-driven, just get her done, how to fit in with the guys, how to fit in to whatever position. I didn't really think about like, I'm a woman in this field, I just got to do it. And so I look out to, so then we're also grappling a little bit about how do we have these conversations in our workforce? How do I get the staff and partners to understand some of the challenges that we had, not only, from those that paved the way before us, but the new younger generation coming on. And I look out and I think, oh my gosh, I hope that this next generation of leaders coming, it'll come much easier for you to even have these conversations. So Wisconsin, very similar to Minnesota, not many women were very white in our demographics. And so my approach has really been, first and foremost, is let's embrace what we do have, and let's remember the diversities we can bring to the table. So whether, where you came, where you, grew up, what school you went to, your career path. And so in order to foster that kind of cultural where you feel like you belong and you're supported in your working environment, to retain the staff that we do have, because that's really critical. And then to get them understand, like, are we ready to open up the doors and support new diversities coming in? And so the kind of approach I've taken too is communicating. Really embracing what you do have, celebrate the diversities that you do have. Don't be afraid to share and those little things. I think oftentimes, especially leading a large organization, we talk about like the big projects, the big initiatives, the shiny new things, and I get the eye rolls from staff of like, oh, DEI is just another shiny new thing. So really thinking about the approach on how do we educate, how do we talk about it, how do we normalize it? And I don't like to use normalize, but I think it's important that it just becomes embedded into our everyday work, what we do. And so a couple tangible things, we revisited our governance model and how we make decisions in our division so that staff can see where they can offer up input for our specialist teams and the decision makers along the way. We've revisited our specialist teams. We have a lot of specialist teams where staff can come on board and be part of projects and initiatives and policies and direction, making sure that we have kind of that diverse perspective sitting at the table. I think I was at a session this afternoon with thinking about just these little leadership trainings you can do. And so whatever level you're at, I would encourage you to bring that forward to your leadership. And if you are a leader, you could do small little trainings like the generations in the workforce, or the DISC, the different communication styles, so that when you're sitting around the table with your leadership team, you can understand how you might be perceived, or how you may think about that decision and need more time and space. So just creating that inclusive environment. But it really comes down to investments. And unless, I think in the public sector, we have some additional challenges because you're beholden to some statutes, HR, legislation, the administration above you. So you really have to be mindful, and you really have to put the energy and time and resources and prioritize work around DEI, or it's not going to happen. And then you as a leader have to model it. And it can be hard, because if you have leaders above you that aren't willing to make that investment and make that a priority, you're up against some additional barriers that maybe in some of the smaller sectors or other industries, you're able to maybe move the bar quicker. But some really exciting things, I'll just wrap up on things that we are doing. We recognized right away that on my leadership team, we needed help. So we made the investment to hire a consultant to come in and really think about, or look at our division and say, what are we doing well? Let's celebrate that. And then we invested in a culture of belonging survey to our staff. And so got the staff involved, working through identifying where are there gaps, where are there challenges, and then we will be launching a DEI roadmap strategic plan here very shortly. So really excited to have some really actionable items that we can start moving forward with. We've dedicated a position, our workforce development specialist, to actually have time carved out for DEI work, especially around coordinating across our division and department, but also reaching out to partners. I think there's so much we can do and leverage with partners that are happening, and so you don't have to do it alone. We also founded a DEI specialist team in our division, so having staff actually sit on a team and think about what does it mean in the workforce. And then lastly, one of the new initiatives that Beatra had mentioned was working with USDA and Southern University and bringing 2 LTE interns to come work with us in our urban forestry program. So really thinking outside the box, how do we extend recruitment to beyond just our normal kind of geographic area and start learning from each other and growing. And again, these aren't seamless. There's lots of challenges, but you know, celebrate those little wins and just keep it a priority and keep it going.
So I want to just point out Heather's monologue just now.
Sorry.
It was impressive because of how transparent it was. You could hear the wheels turning, and this is what when we talk about that iceberg, how we see just a little slither on top, but there's so much that goes into the decisions that allow us to crack the ceiling and allow us to build more inclusive organizations. All the little things you mentioned, somebody in this room, she said something that someone has either gone through, thought about, had to navigate. You've gotten this far, but then you put this proposal together, but your leader was like, no, we're not investing in that. You know, now is not the time. We need new computers this year, you know, or knowing you don't have the talent inside of your organization and being willing to bring a consultant in. And that's making, I would say, very vulnerable in the forestry industry for folks to just kind of like go through the climate assessment and the surveying experiences. But it just comes to show that you have to do the work, and it's a lot of work. Hillary, I want to touch on your experience as commissioner in Washington. One, your energy is infectious. And I'm almost scared to ask you this question, but we'll go there.
Okay.
All right, I want to make sure we take advantage of the time, but also leave time in case anyone out there also has questions. I would love for you to share one of your most celebrated or proudest accomplishments that you've had since you've been in your role.
Yeah. So I'd say, I'll just start from the premise that I didn't come into this job having any executive experience at all. I'm an environmental land use attorney, right? And so largest team I've ever led is 20 people, right? Lots of glass ceilings had already been broken. So like 60-40 in most law firms, right? So I'd walk in a room, I'm like, yeah, okay, the numbers are pretty good for us and they're gonna get a little better, right? My kids would be honestly telling you that she's never put out a fire, and kitchen fire, you wouldn't wanna see her even try. So I'm running for office in 2016 after Washington State suffered the most catastrophic wildfires in its history. 1 million acres burned in 2015 alone, and we tragically lost 3 firefighters' lives. And whole communities threatened, and some of them burned. And it was a wake-up call for Washington State. And when I was running, most of it was, how could a little lady like you run a big fire agency? My opponent was a man in the woods, man came from the woods, man was always been in the woods, man is comfortable in the woods. That was literally the debate comment, I'm just gonna tell you. What do I do with that? Where was Eve all that time, right? I mean, come on! Like, where'd my rib come from? Where'd your rib come? Can we just go eat ribs? But in this whole context, I had fire chiefs saying, we're in trouble. And, you know, fire industry, fire is also very male-oriented, male-dominated, and they were very scared. And when I came into office, I had to be willing to take on the courage of saying, I know none of you have faith in me or trust me or can look down my resume and believe I can lead on almost 2,000 person organization with the responsibilities I have and the life-threatening responsibilities for our firefighters and our communities. And so I made it my #1 issue right from the beginning. We will be the state that is going to tackle this wildfire crisis, and not just tackle it, but lead across this country. And we're not just going to be doing it in how we fight fires, but truly being proactive and restore the health of our forests, so our forests can be part of our partner in fighting these fires with us. So within 8 months, I developed the first forest health plan for the state of Washington, where in the next 20 years, we would restore 1.25 million acres of forest. That told these communities, especially, I'll be honest, Eastern Washington, rural communities on their front lines that didn't feel like government was responsive, that she's listening, she's understanding the problem, and she's gonna get to work on it right away. And we are already well over 30% to our goal in just 4 years, and we'll be actually at 50% of our goal in probably around 6 years, and that's on federal lands as well as state lands and private and tribal lands. But even more significantly was what we did in wildfires. I spent an enormous amount of time going around the state and just listening to a lot of men, listening to a lot of firefighters and fire chiefs about what was broken. Our agencies do not, as Department of Natural Resources, and our brand after the 2014 through 2016 fires was DNR, do not respond, do not resuscitate. You couldn't have a worse brand if your job was to actually protect the people of Washington State and the firefighters. We set a goal that we will keep 90% of our fires below 10 acres. And last year, in the worst drought in Washington State's history, we were fighting fires from April all the way to October with only 40 full-time firefighters. We had 8 Vietnam War helicopters with bullet holes. When I first came into office, we were able to keep 95% of our fires below 10 acres. Wow. And it wasn't necessarily because I went and got this big budget and lots of money to do it. It's that I listened and learned, even with limited resources, how can we make a difference? We pre-positioned all of our equipment so it's close to the fires. When there's smoke in the air, we have our air resources up and in the air and on them quickly and containing them, moving to next one. And the other thing that I did that was significant is after the 2020 fires, where we lost an entire town, the Labor Day firestorm, within just literally 2 to 3 hours, and we tragically lost the first civilian on my watch, which was the little boy. We were pleading and begging for air resources and firefighters, but California and Oregon were also on fire. And every call we made, they said, we're sorry, you don't have enough values at risk. You don't have enough values at risk. My job and my responsibility is to take care of the people of Washington. Every one of them is valuable to me. It doesn't matter where they live, and especially my firefighting team. And I said, never again will I ever be in a place begging and pleading for resources. And so the reason we were able to keep in the worst drought in Washington's history with the longest fire season from April to October with no break at 95% of our fires below 10 acres is because I told my team, males who've been fighting fires for 35 years, we will not have enough air resources unless you listen to me right now and you go get every single air resource you can, so we are ready, and they're in Washington State's control. We went from around 10 helicopters, Vietnam, to 37 aircraft in 2 weeks. Wow. And our firefighters. And our fire chief said, you know, ma'am, I gotta tell you, I didn't think we needed all those. This was within 2 weeks. He said, we need every single one of them. Thank you for your leadership in making that call.
Awesome. Thank you, Hillary. Patty, I'd like to turn to you. I know you've been in your tenure a shorter period of time, but that's not to say that you haven't been impactful. And so we'll let you slide in deeper into your career if you'd like to. But would you like to share out one of your proudest accomplishments that you've had?
Oh, I don't know if I have a proud accomplishment that I've made. I am really, really proud of the work that our staff does. When I first stumbled across Forest Resources Department at the University of Minnesota, I was really amazed about this field that I didn't know existed before, and was really excited to learn about it. I'm really excited to see our staff growing and taking on leadership. we have a bunch of people that are going to do amazing things in the future. Forest industry is the 5th largest industry in Minnesota, and Minnesota DNR provides about 30% of the fiber used by forest industry. So it's not something I'm proud of that I do, but it's something I'm proud of that our whole department and our division do is in supporting the economy of Minnesota.
Thank you, Patty. Heather, a little bit different of a question. Yeah, just in case you were working on your response there.
I was, right?
Plot twist. You know, as a first, and you know, we talked about being first, but we also know that we won't be the last. And the goal is for us to leave the door open for the next female leader to blaze trails after we leave these roles that we're in. What would you share to any of the women in the audience today who may be interested in a state forestry agency role?
Oh, that could go on a long.
We don't have a long time
I know,
now,
we don't
Heather.
have a long time. I think, you know, the message looking back would just be, raise your hand, get involved. You have, you know, I think in general, I like to think that people, you know, mean well, but they don't know you. And when you're in an organization, you know, we're all busy, and you may have really good supervisors that you can work with for career pathways. But unless you're taking some ownership to get involved, be parts of initiatives, teams, learn about what other programs are doing in your agency or your sector, and then be speaking up of what you need. In order for change to happen, we need to educate those around us to then be able to educate themselves on what it is that women need to be successful. And so if you don't raise your hand, if you aren't kind of keeping a tab on it, you're going to miss opportunities to when the door is open. And there is never the right time. I mean, I remember when I decided to throw my name in the hat for a first line team leader, and I was still young. I had young babies. You know, I was a young forester, and I thought, well, you know, there's no way I can do this. I still don't know a lot about X, Y, and Z. And but then I thought, and some folks that I worked with were like, if not now, when, Heather? And so you got to take those chances. And truly, if you build relationships along the way, you're going to find people that support you. And so listen to those voices.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So of the 7 minutes that Mia is leaving me, I'm going to take one and give a selfish plug for my proudest accomplishment. And that is happening right now. Just a year ago, my program, Urban and Community Forestry, was celebrating a historic high funding level of $36 million. And about a month and a half ago, our program received $1.5 billion. And when I think about the resources available for the disparities, the systemically underserved communities, the places we've not gotten to in a long time for whatever reason, and how we can have such an impact on the forest and the green spaces where people live, work, and play every day. First and foremost, that is often a gateway to getting people to our more majestic forests and parks and recreational experiences. That is one of my proudest accomplishments. It's happening right now. So I am floating on a high, but I will say that spending time with you all has been indeed a huge moment for me, because again, coming in from rural Louisiana into an urban forester trainee position, no one ever looked like me in any of the meetings. I started my career in the Southeast. But to now spend time and be in a room that is just as diverse and accomplished and ready to lead and go and take our industry to the next level, it's exciting. So we have a couple minutes. If there are one or two questions, if there's something we said, I don't know if you all have the stickers on your name badges that say government, but if anybody is interested in the public service side of forestry, there's stickers that folks can put on their badges. If you see someone that says government, they're on taxpayers' dollars, pull them to the side, ask them. You know, somebody asked me earlier about how to get in the Forest Service, so we were just in there taking notes. So is there a hand? I think I see, there's two hands. Oh, come on down, come on down. Mike?
While we're waiting, I'll just put in the plug, Wisconsin DNR Division of Forestry. We're hiring, so keep your eyes open.
Yes.
I would love for you to work for me.
Washington State, we're open too. I need more women in my agency any day. I need more women in my state.
USA Jobs, Forest Service, $1.5 billion. Come work with me. You can wear heels. You can wear everything. We don't have uniforms.
Google
Not in my
Minnesota
program, we don't have
careers.
uniforms. Question?
Okay. Check. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Cooper. I'm with MSU and I lead the Forest Carbon and Climate program, and it's really wonderful to be here. We really enjoyed hearing this conversation. I wanted to ask, you've shared a lot of examples, and obviously we know you're amazing leaders. Could you share a little more insight of what it was like to take over such large roles and what it meant to be a woman taking that over? Did you have to change the direction of the big ship, or what was unique about, like, we know you're capable, but what was even different about being a female leader in these positions?
So, I mean, when I first came in, I have an agency, like I said, 1,600, and most of the people have been there for a very long time. And their attitude, actually, some of them is, we were here for the last commissioner, we'll be here for the next commissioner. We'll just buckle down and nobody will see us. And my job is to find them, elevate them, get them to think big, and right, which is hard to steer that ship, I'll say. I also walked in and I had one woman in the entire leadership of the agency. It's about, so the whole leadership, I added, so we're now two then at the time when I walked in, and we had no people of color, right? So it was a very white male at the leadership all the way down. I quickly have changed that to now the top 3 positions that I'm the CEO basically, because it's $1 billion, you know, we're actually literally like a company because we generate money and revenue. Woman CEO, woman COO, and a woman CFO, right? Wow. And yeah, ooh, it's exciting, right? We're more than 54% at the leadership alone, right? And now 25% people of color in the leadership. Created the first ever director of equity and environmental justice that not only is addressing within the agency, but also where our investments are outside the agency, on the ground, and changing communities all the way from making sure those communities are more resilient to wildfire and drought and all the impacts we see in climate, but also in the context of urban, because we have a 13-degree difference just in our heat dome that we faced in parts of Seattle between communities of color and low income and white affluent communities. So it's been largely a context of really sort of stepping in. And I'll say I have to do, the reason I told that aircraft issue is because I'll tell you, for a month, I'm sitting like, nope, just trust them, just trust them, just trust them. They know what they're doing. They've been doing this for 35 years. And I was like, no, you're gonna trust your gut. Because women, our guts know. We know when something's not right. We know when something doesn't feel like it's going to actually lead to the good things on the ground. But too often we question that voice of, I'm new here, or I haven't been doing this. I'm not a wildfire or a forester. I'm sorry. I have heels, but I have dirt on them. Right? And so I question my gut all the time. Don't question your gut. It's good to ask questions. It's good to lean in and learn, absolutely. Do not question your gut.
Thank you, Hillary. I felt like we had 2 questions in that corner, or are we spreading it across the room?
Oh, good. Hello, thank you very much for all of that. I'm Georgia Peterson, Michigan State University Extension. And this is a little broader question to how, whenever I try to explain to my friends and family that aren't in forestry what I do, they just, they don't at all get it. And we've all been emphasizing how important this realm is to our futures. As women, how do you explain what you do to people that have no idea what forests or forestry is about?
Look at them. Heather's pointing at me saying, you take that. Boy, you know, probably my most common answer has been, I count trees. I spent, you know, most of my career in the field. That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, keeping it pretty simple, you've learned through time of just, people love trees. So you just say, I work with trees, and I work with people who care for trees. And then, you know, the conversation kind of expands as far as like, well, what does that mean? What do you do? And so, but you always have to start simple.
And I have a slightly different answer because I'm an urban forester. So I really get the dumb look. Because it's like, what exactly is that? So it's the trees where you live, work, and play, but I talk to people and make it relevant to where and who they are. I talk about the impact of the work that I'm doing. So because I'm managing an urban forestry program, jobs are created. It takes people to prune and maintain and take care of trees. Those are jobs. Those are living wage jobs. Shade trees. And I take people back to their experiences. When you go to the parking lot at the mall, where do you park? Do you park closer to the trees, or do you just go out there and park where it's going to be 10 degrees hotter in your Subaru when you get out of JCPenney? So I just try to make it as relevant as possible to where they are. I think, you know, on many levels, I've always been taught to try to communicate from a 4th grade learning level. And if any of you work in conservation education or environmental education, sometimes just making it plain is the best way that we could bring people along. There's nothing worse than being in a room with a practitioner who will kill you with carbon sequestration and mensuration and dendrology and all the things, right? And they're just talking to themselves. And so I say when you're communicating, always think about, you know, their ability to receive the message. There's a reason there's multiple versions of the Bible. There's reasons, you know, Dr. Seuss had to rhyme to help people read a little bit better. Help them along the way. And then also, I would say, as we have an opportunity to brand the work we do, show up as much as possible. Take the invitations, take the talking invitations. Heather says she's not a public speaker. I think she did a fantastic job up here today. Accept the invitations. Social media, make sure that those young ladies see you in your forestry role, dressed, impressing, growing, thriving, however and wherever you are. Make sure you're seen. Don't be hidden in these roles, because before I came in, I did not know a Black female forester, but I do know more now. And I have brought more in since I've been here in the space, and plan to smother y'all with more as much as possible. But I think that that's just one thing I would like to leave, is that don't hide in the shadows. Be seen, take the invitation. We're probably out of time. Thank you for coming to our Green Table Talk.